During a trip to Croatia, a group of friends sets out to tackle a challenging mountain trail. Before they begin, Fred gathers everyone together and explains the route. He assures them that if everything goes as planned, they should be back in under 3 hours. With their gear packed and ready, the group climbs into their vehicle and heads toward the trailhead. As they drive, Karine tries to lift the group's spirits by singing a song, and soon everyone joins in. Though Luca can't help but feel uneasy around Guam. There's history there since Guam once dated Clara, and the tension still lingers. A little while later, they arrive at the foot of the mountain. Fred quickly spots a rocky wall they'll need to climb and, without hesitation, shows off his skills by scaling it with ease. Reaching a safe ledge, he secures the equipment and tosses down a rope for the others. Karine volunteers to stay at the back of the group to help guide Luca, since this is his first real climb. Clara, Guam, and especially Luca hesitate, worried about the risk, but Fred and Karine reassure them that everything is under control. Eager to show off and possibly unsettle Luca, Guam steps up to climb first. As expected, Luca grows even more uncomfortable, but Clara gently encourages him, promising that she'll help him through it. One by one, they begin their ascent, with Karine remaining behind to assist Luca. At the top, Clara makes it up safely, and Guam seizes the chance to pull her aside for a private conversation. He brings up an incident at the hospital, revealing that Clara, a doctor, recently lost a patient during an emergency situation. Though Guam tries to console her, Clara coldly points out that he wasn't there to witness what happened. It's clear their relationship ended on a difficult note, with Guam still hoping for reconciliation, while Clara has long moved on. Once everyone completes the first leg of the climb, Fred takes a moment to explain some important safety tips. He reminds them to always keep their protective hooks clipped to the safety cables and warns them not to lean on the same section of the case, as too much weight could loosen the anchors, something none of them wants to risk on a climb like this. With the instructions clear, the group presses on, enjoying both the stunning scenery and the treacherous terrain. As they progress, they reach a steep wall equipped with metal clamps bolted into the rock face. The group moves steadily, though Luca's nerves and lack of experience slow things down. Still, determined not to appear weak in front of Clara, and with Guam's presence pushing him, Luca struggles to keep pace. A short while later, Fred leads them to a narrow suspension bridge connecting two cliffs. Though sturdy, the bridge is high above the ground, and Fred advises everyone to avoid looking down to prevent dizziness. Guam, unbothered, strides ahead across the bridge, followed closely by Clara, who's both anxious and impressed by the structure's scale. When it's Luca's turn, however, the sheer drop unsettles him. Karine gently encourages him to take his time and focus on his balance. But the nerves prove too much, and midway across, Luca freezes in place, paralyzed by the height. Sensing that Luca is beginning to lose control, Clara quickly circles back to calm him and stays by his side as they continue across the bridge. As the group nears the end, Guam extends a hand to help Luca, but Luca stubbornly refuses. Soon after, it's Karine's turn to cross, and Guam notices something alarming. The hooks holding the bridge's cable are starting to loosen. He quietly alerts Fred. Not wanting to alarm Karine, Fred casually asks her to check her safety hook and proceeds slowly. But Clara, unable to contain her fear, shouts to warn Karine about the cable coming loose and urges her to hurry. Startled, Karine breaks into a run, causing more strain on the weakened bridge. The cable snaps, and the entire structure begins to collapse. In a frantic moment, Fred yells for Karine to hold onto the safety line. The bridge falls, but thankfully, the safety harness keeps her suspended, though it's clear it won't hold for long. Thinking fast, Fred tosses his rope to Karine, who catches it with great effort. Working together, the group hauls her up just in time before the remaining cable gives way and the bridge is lost. With no way to go back, their only option is to follow the narrow path down the mountainside before darkness falls. Luca, already on edge, protests, but Fred insists it's the only way forward. Reluctantly, the group continues, relying on another safety line bolted to the rock wall. But the trek takes another bad turn when Karine notices the cable ahead is damaged, making it impossible to proceed. The solution is risky. Karine and Fred will climb ahead, then use a rope to help the others up. Once again, Luca's nerves get the better of him. Even Clara's reassurances aren't enough, and he slips, left dangling by his harness. Guam quickly rushes to help him. Meanwhile, Fred reaches the top but can't find a clear path through the thick forest. Karine joins him and, sensing the others in danger, demands a plan. Unable to avoid the truth any longer, Fred admits he knew the route was dangerous but believed he could handle it. Karine scolds him for his reckless decision, but before the argument escalates, Fred suddenly steps into a bear trap hidden beneath the leaves. Karine rushes to help, but the trap's steel jaws grip tighter. Meanwhile, Guam is still struggling to pull Luca to safety when Luca's harness starts coming loose. Luca panics, shaking the line even more, forcing Guam to yell at him to stay calm. Back at the top, Fred keeps battling the trap, but it's no use. Realizing his friends are in more immediate danger, he hands the rope to Karine and urges her to help them instead. Though reluctant to leave him, she does as asked and finds the others clinging to the cliff wall. Karine throws the rope down and, with tremendous effort, the three manage to climb to the top. But Fred remains trapped, and the sounds of the forest grow louder around him. Hearing rustling nearby, he calls out for Karine, only to be met by a shadowy figure who silently grabs the chain attached to the trap and drags Fred away into the trees. Moments later, the group returns to find the empty trap left behind. Guam immediately senses something isn't right and demands an explanation from Karine about why they took such a dangerous route. Luca, focused solely on his own safety, suggests they forget about Fred and move on. But Karine refuses, unwilling to leave without searching. Clara steps in and insists that, whether anyone likes it or not, they're going to find Fred. The group heads deeper into the woods, calling his name, but there's no sign of him. Tensions boil over as Luca grows increasingly frustrated, questioning why they even joined this trip in the first place. Guam, fed up with his attitude, provokes him, and a fight breaks out. Clara rushes to pull them apart as the dense forest closes in around them. As the group moves carefully through the dense forest, one misstep sends Clara tumbling into a deep pit hidden beneath the leaves. Without wasting a moment, Karine grabs her climbing gear and carefully makes her way down. A sudden slip nearly sends her into a jagged rock, but she regains her footing and continues her descent. The deeper she goes, the more uneasy she feels, noticing sharp stakes planted in the ground. It becomes clear this isn't a simple hole, but something set up with intent. Reaching the bottom, Karine finds Clara injured, her arm caught on one of the stakes. Despite the pain, Clara asks for help, and Karine gently frees her, quickly bandaging the wound. Once safely out of the pit, Clara shares her fear that someone has deliberately set this trap and might also be behind Fred's disappearance. The realization sends a fresh wave of dread through Karine. Determined to keep looking, the group presses on, though the weather turns against them as heavy rain begins to fall. Karine, growing increasingly worried for Fred, breaks down in tears. Clara comforts her, urging her not to give up now. In an effort to cover more ground, the four split up and search in different directions. Karine moves through the soaked forest, calling out for Fred, but as despair sets in, she's suddenly struck by a sharp pain in her chest. She looks down to find an arrow attached to a rope piercing through her. Moments later, Clara arrives just in time to see Karine being pulled away into the darkness. Luca and Guam hear the distant cries and rush to help, but by the time they arrive, Karine has vanished. In the darkness, Karine, with no flashlight, uses the flash of her camera to illuminate the area. Through the flickering light, she catches sight of a shadowy figure approaching. Another flash reveals the stranger close enough to grab her, pulling her away. Back at the last known location, Clara searches for her friend, but finds only a torn piece of Karine's clothing stuck on the crossbow bolt. Heartbroken, she breaks down, and Luca comforts her, insisting they need to stay hidden before the same fate finds them. After a tense, rain-soaked wait, Guam suggests they move on. They cautiously continue their search until they come across a lone cabin in a clearing. Hoping their missing friends might be inside, the trio arms themselves with whatever they can find and enter. There, they discover Fred, lying unconscious on a table. Clara hurries to check on him, but as he regains consciousness, it's clear he's in terrible condition. His injuries are severe, and despite Clara's attempts to comfort him, Fred's condition worsens until, in a heartbreaking moment, he slips away. Grieving, Clara clings to Guam while Luca, struggling with his emotions, covers Fred's body with a curtain. The loss leaves them shaken, and with Karine still missing, Luca insists they need to leave immediately. But Guam remembers Fred had flares in his backpack, their only hope for signaling help. Guam ventures into the cabin's basement, flashlight in hand. What he finds is disturbing. Animal remains hang from the ceiling, and the name Anton is scrawled on the wall, revealing who might be behind these horrors. Nearby, he finds a cage surrounded by eerie signs, several human heads displayed as grim trophies. Shaken, he quickly grabs Fred's backpack and rushes back upstairs. At the top of the stairs, Luca confronts Guam, demanding the backpack. When Guam refuses, Luca forcefully takes it, pushing Guam back and locking him inside the basement. Luca then lies to Clara, claiming Guam isn't with them and urging her to leave immediately. But as they near the exit, a stranger emerges from the shadows, carrying Karin's lifeless form over his shoulders. In an instant, the man knocks Clara down and turns on Luca, launching a vicious assault. Though Luca tries to defend himself, the stranger's strength overwhelms him. He drives Luca into the wall, leaving him dazed. Clara, regaining consciousness, throws herself at the attacker in a desperate attempt to save Luca. A struggle ensues, but the stranger overpowers her and twists her arm. Clara cries out for help, but as soon as Luca grabs the backpack, the man takes the flare and leaves the cabin, disappearing into the darkness. Abandoned and badly hurt, Clara struggles to defend herself, but another brutal blow leaves her unconscious. A short while later, Clara regains consciousness to the sound of Guam's voice. Both of them find their hands bound by rope in the basement. Clara struggles to loosen the knots, but soon the unsettling sound of footsteps can be heard upstairs. The stranger is moving about, sharpening a blade and preparing Fred's body. Shortly after, he does the same with Karin's, covering her with a dark cloth and leaving her lifeless form on the floor. Knowing their turn may be near, Clara and Guam desperately attempt to free themselves. But before they can, the menacing figure appears at the basement door and begins making his way toward them. He lunges at Guam, striking him repeatedly. When Clara tries to intervene, the man grabs her and drags her into the kitchen. There, she's tied up once more as he approaches her slowly, clutching a blade. Hearing Clara's shouts for help, Guam manages to break free of his restraints and races to save her, but the basement door is locked. He throws himself against it, using all his strength, but it refuses to budge. Just as the situation seems hopeless, Luca appears at the cabin, hurling a rock at the man's head. Furious, the attacker grabs a crossbow and chases after Luca, giving Clara a chance to untie herself and reach Guam. Clara and Guam grab whatever they can to defend themselves. Before leaving, Clara takes a moment to say a quiet farewell to Karin. Guam hands Clara a small knife and urges her to escape. But Clara refuses to abandon Luca and insists they go after him. Meanwhile, Luca is sprinting through the woods with the man close behind. In the distance, he spots a gondola, his only hope of leaving the mountain. As Luca runs, an arrow nearly misses him. He continues fleeing, but another shot lands in his leg. With no time to pull it out, he limps toward the summit, only to realize the gondola is still far away. Moments later, the pursuer appears. Cornered, Luca decides to stand his ground. He throws a punch, but the man grabs his arm and bites down hard. A struggle follows as Luca is overpowered and knocked to the ground, the wound on his leg worsening. Despite the pain, Luca summons his strength, tackles the man, and pulls out the arrow. He strikes the attacker's foot with the sharp tip. The man howls in pain and fights back with a headbutt, then tries to overpower Luca again. In a desperate move, Luca grabs a nearby rock and strikes his attacker. Though dazed, the man won't stay down, so Luca hits him again. When the man finally drops, instead of finishing him, Luca chooses to flee. The attacker crawls to the mountaintop, but loses his balance and slips over the edge, catching hold of an iron ladder. Just as it seems the ladder might give way, Guam and Clara arrive. Guam reaches out and grabs Luca's hand, calling Clara over to assist. But in that moment, Guam remembers how Luca abandoned him earlier in the basement. Consumed by anger, Guam tells Clara that Luca's slipping and pretends he can't hold on. Realizing Guam's intentions, Luca pleads, but Guam lets go. Clara, unaware of what just happened, rushes toward the edge. Guam stops her, explaining there's nothing more to be done. Before either can react, a final arrow strikes Guam, hitting him fatally. Clara cries out in shock and grief, but her sorrow quickly hardens into determination. She takes up the knife Guam had given her and goes after the man, who's reloading his weapon. Before he can fire, Clara knocks the crossbow away and attacks. A brutal struggle unfolds, with the man countering her strikes and slamming her against the ground. Clara manages to shove him off and scrambles for the knife. In a final burst of effort, she lunges at him. The attacker blocks her and retaliates, but Clara finds an opening, delivering a decisive strike. Wounded, the man collapses, but Clara hesitates to finish him. Choosing instead to escape, she leaves him behind and heads for the gondola. At long last, after everything she's endured and the friend she's lost, Clara boards the gondola and begins her descent down the mountain. But her decision to spare him proves costly. Though badly hurt, the man rises, finds the dropped knife, and disappears into the shadows. Moments later, a sharp metallic sound echoes through the cliffs, the unmistakable snap of a gondola cable. Clara's escape is cut short as the gondola plummets from the mountain. In the aftermath, search teams recover only Luca's remains. The other victims, along with the dangerous hermit, remain missing, leaving behind only chilling silence in the forested hills.